match point. So you guys asked for more E30 M3. This is the one you've been following probably most often. It's the 1988 Diamond Schwartz, so metallic black, E30 M3, which I've put a 2002 M3 convertible engine into. That's an S54 B32, inline 6 double overhead cam, iron block, aluminum head, 6 throttle bodies, rated at 330 horsepower, a little bit more in the European markets. This car originally came with a 2.3 liter 4-cylinder, about 200 horsepower. Other than the engine, the transmission is from an E36 M3. It's a 5-speed ZF box. It's an S5D 320Z. People really like these transmissions. They're very inexpensive. They're very, very strong. They shift really nicely. In this case, it's actually pretty easy to bolt all this stuff in. In order to get the engine physically into the car, you need an oil pan from a 91 to 95 BMW 5 Series, the 525i. You need the engine mount arms, the pieces of aluminum that bolt to the block from any E36 6-cylinder car. In the States, it's the 325, 328, 323, 320, I think that's about it, and the M3. They all work. This car is running 96 M3 arms. Transmission was sourced from a 99 M3. I actually bought this car with an S52, which was the E36, the 96, the 99 engine. Sold the engine because I didn't really like that in this car. It's not a real M engine in a lot of ways. It's kind of a stroked and cammed, bored out 328 engine. Good engine, very, very reliable, but not that much power and not very interesting. So the transmission bolts the same. It's running the same flywheel, clutch kit, and all that as the E36 engine was. So stock. I did put a brand new OEM clutch kit in there, but it has no issue taking the power. Drive shaft is E36 328. The only modification you have to do to get that to fit in this car is there's a rubber bearing holder in the middle of the drive shaft, which has to be flipped around and put back on the drive shaft the other way around, due to how it's centered in the hump in the center of the car underneath. If you left it in forward, it would bolt, but you would wear out U-joints and flex discs really, really rapidly. So I'm just gonna tool around a little bit until the oil warms up, which takes a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't have the oil temperature gauge working, even though it is a standard feature on both the car and the engine. They rely on completely different sensors and protocols. The donor engine from the 2002 M3 had a thin film sensor in the bottom of the oil pan, which was actually integral with the level sender, and the E30 had it in the oil filter housing, which is a much more conventional thermistor-based sensor. This particular example has done, at this point, 225,312 miles. I bought it last year with around 225,000 miles on it, and I had it completely resprayed. I had whatever rust was on the outside completely taken down to bare metal and replaced when needed. The car is very, very original. It sits on stock suspension, stock springs, has stock brakes, although I did replace all 4 brake calipers with new old stock units. The braking performance is actually pretty good. This engine, when you install it in an E30 chassis, you're kind of limited on what you can do as far as a brake assist. This car actually runs unassisted manual brakes, running a massive Motorsports brake booster delete, which actually isn't too bad. It moves the fulcrum point up on the brake arm, so you're pushing further with the same amount of effort to get that amount of braking. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it actually isn't bad, considering you don't have any vacuum assist, and you always know what to expect. If your engine dies, you have the same brakes as when you're original. M3s came with this 385mm M-Tech 1 steering wheel, which feels really nice. It's actually pretty big as far as M3 wheels are concerned. A lot of the special editions in the European cars came with a 370mm version of this wheel, which actually doesn't sound like much of a difference. It is. I personally don't care all that much, and this car looks more original, so I'm inclined to keep it. As the stock AM/FM cassette radio, which still works. This onboard computer, the 13-button unit, was a standard for all US market M3s. Coveted around the world in other markets, as a lot of those cars ship with clocks, analog clocks, which is what most people in the United States want in their cars. You always want what you can't have. This car no longer has air conditioning, although it could. Minnesota, we do get into the hot temperatures, but not until July, so you can plan around it. Crack-free dash. These cars are prone to, unfortunately, cracks all over those. This is kind of an uncommon piece to have crack-free. I mentioned the exterior color is diamond Schwartz metallic. The interior color in this car, since it's a 1988, is tan, but it's pearl beige tan instead of a tour tan, which is what you would find in a mid-1988 or newer. This is a little bit lighter. I prefer it, but that's neither here nor there. Now that the oil's warmed up a little bit more. I haven't figured out what that little whistle noise is yet. I think it's some panel. Did rod bearings on this engine before I installed it, so I'm trying not to rev it all the way out to 8,100 RPM, which is when it really comes alive and sings. But I'd rather not do that job twice. It was kind of expensive, and even just taking the engine out of this car is a little bit of a chore. So hopefully this gives you some sort of a sense of what it sounds like. The ride on this thing with this factory 15-inch wheels is very, very comfortable. Really no complaints there at all. Throttle response is great. I had to retrofit an electronic gas pedal in this car for this engine. And I'm going to stop and get some gas. Freshly fueled up. So I guess most people want to know not just about the car, because everybody knows about E30 M3s these days. They want to know about the engine swap. I've kind of told you how to mechanically get it in the car. You can run pretty much everything from the E46. The only stuff you really have to change is the power steering pump. And let's see here, what else? I guess the main engine harness. This car I'm running no, it's actually not right. I am running the pump from the S54, the 2001 M3, but I have to run a power steering pressure line from a 1997 E36 323 IS. My reasoning behind that was those later E36 run a Luke LF30 power steering pump, just like the E46 M3. It runs a slightly different bracket, but that doesn't seem to matter. The return and feed hoses, as well as the reservoir, just use E36 6-cylinder. That all fits. So, depending on the steering rack you have, if you have an E36 rack, just use all E36 components. It fits. This car is running a stock, unmodified Siemens MSS54 ECU. So I'm retaining the double variable valve timing. This particular computer has been coated to get rid of the immobilizer. It's been coated to remove the rear oxygen sensors. I'm in a non-emission state, so I really don't care about the sniffer test. This car is catless. The computer coating depends on who you have it done with, but I think I paid $350 to get the computer completely decoated, which basically, aside from the electronic gas pedal, which in and of itself I think takes 8 wires to the computer, you really only need, I want to say, 3 or 4 additional wires beyond that to get it running. That won't be getting it running well. You still need the front oxygen sensors, you need the pyrometer, but you don't need the DSC, you don't need any of the CAN bus stuff. All that's taken out of the computer. So. Makes a good noise. I mentioned earlier I'm on my way out to the shop right now to put a resonator in the car. Right now, the exhaust setup is the US market exhaust manifolds. The front sections before the catalytic converters are where they would have been. And beyond that, I've got 2.5-inch aluminized mandrel bends I bought from Jegs. And I've kind of cut those and welded them into place with another 2.5-inch V-band between the front and rear exhaust manifolds at the Y-pipe. Then they join at a Y-pipe, which you can look at in some of my earlier videos on this car. And that goes into a single V-band. That then dumps into a straight pipe all the way to the rear muffler, which in this case is a MagnaFlow 14815. That's the part number. It's a dual tip, 2.5-inch, dual 2.5 out muffler. So I'm trying to keep the speed a little lower so I don't get that weird hum. It's really, really annoying. So yeah, on the inside, the exhaust isn't too bad. You can tell I'm using a decent audio recorder, so it's loud in here. You could easily carry a conversation at highway speed, but you lean into it at all and it gets pretty warm. So I'm putting in a vibrant resonator, and if that's quiet enough, we'll leave it good just at that. If not, I'll probably throw in a catalytic converter as well, just to kind of reduce the rasp. But this swap mechanically has been really, really solid. I'm running the E30 M3 radiator. My red 91 M3, I'm running an E30 318i radiator. And the upside to that one, although the cooling capacity is quite a bit less, it has an integrated expansion tank, so you can keep the engine bay much, much cleaner. And that's an issue I ran into on this particular car, running the external expansion tank radiator. Finding a decent hose and a decent place to keep that expansion tank, you have a couple different options. It's a little tricky. I ended up using the standard expansion tank for an E30 M3, and then running just some Goodyear 3/4-inch hose from the water pump overflow on the S54 to the expansion bottle. Hope that's rain and not coolant. I'm getting a little bit of spatter on the windshield. You probably can't tell, but where was I? Oh yeah, cooling system. That main return hose doesn't look great. I'm still trying to find a better solution for that. Maybe something metal with rubber on both ends to try to make it look a little bit better. The cooling capacity is definitely quite a bit higher on this car with the E30 M3 radiator. I'm using the standard 88 to 91 M3 capillary return hose. And that's feeding some aluminum hobby tubing, basically, to get all the way to the end of the radiator. Oh, fun. This car is kind of sketchy in the rain. It's got, I think they're 195 55 R15 Dunlop Dureza DZ102s. They're really, really good tires. They hook up really well on the dry. However, this car gets a bit, I don't know, it likes to rotate when it gets wet out. It's got a 3.73 geared rear end. It's a limited slip out of a 325i. The red car's got a 293. That's probably a better ratio. However, if you're running the 5-speed in this car with this engine, I'd recommend you try to find a 3.25 to 1 out of an E28 M5, or not the M5, the 535. I think that really would be a butter zone differential, because you get a little bit of the off-the-line insanity of the 373, but you get the fuel economy and the cruising of the 293. Yeah. It's a nice car. It's been a lot of work, and there's going to be a lot more work ahead of me. But I'm fortunate enough to have stumbled upon two examples that needed some love that, fortunately for me, already had the wrong engines in them, so I didn't have to pay the price premium for the 4-cylinder. I like that engine, but I personally would never pay what it's worth at this point, ever since these cars got into the insane price range that they are currently in. You figure a car in this sort of condition is probably worth $45,000 at this point, thereabouts. Mileage doesn't seem to matter hardly at all to people anymore. I'll probably stop the video because we're on a boring highway. When I get to something more interesting, I'll turn it back on if I have any more space left on these cards. Again, forgive for the boring and wordy review, I guess, of the car, but I don't really know what you guys want to know about it. It's fast, it's very comfortable, it looks insanely cool, and it's always been one of my dream cars since I was a kid, so it's wonderful to finally have one of these things. Coming up on a cloverleaf, that's maybe a little more fun. It doesn't hook up at all in the rain. Sounds good though. It's always an odd sensation wrapping the tachometer needle all the way to the end and then a little bit beyond where the tachometer stops, and you haven't even hit the fuel cut yet. This computer's programmed, I think, with an 8,200 RPM fuel cut. The gauge goes to 8,000. The car originally had an engine that revved to 7,000, so. It's got some pretty bad wheel hop. I'm actually not sure how to cure that. The red one really doesn't do that. Consequence of the bigger tires or a more worn out suspension, I'm not really sure. Top end power of this engine is amazing, but a lot of people call it gutless down low. I don't know where those people are really coming out from. This is by far the torquiest normally aspirated inline 6 BMW ever made, and the off-the-line torque is amazing on this thing. I mean, it's still a 3.2 liter 6. That's a pretty big engine, so I've never had any issue. Granted, this car is 2,900 pounds,